regard to the definitely delicate financial situation of the Federal Republic and federal states, which present itself less as a failure of constitutional standards than definitely as a failure of supervision by the constitutional courts, a new setting of constitutional impediments is present. With the general prohibition of taking on new structural debts in any form, combined with exceptions, the basic law expresses that the Federal Republic is bound to the idea of sustainable budgets as much as to the guarantee of the state's capacity to act determined in exceptional circumstances. Meanwhile, efforts to effectively reduce public debts can be found on a state level too. The Constitution amending legislature, which tries to implement the requirements set up by the constitutional law for the Federal Republic of Germany, can either only target the states, whereas relevant regulation has to be more specified. One possible way would be revenues and expenditures of the state have to be balanced strictly without credit funding. Or, and we have this discussion on the federal state law as well, or regulation could be include the budgets of local authorities. Revenues and expenditures of state and communities have to be balanced strictly without credit funding. And this would be permitted, however, this is not strictly demanded by the Constitution. As far as a strict obligation for communities was intended, incidentally, local government law inevitably would have to be amended as well with regard to the ordinary legal acts that allow for debt. Obligating communities to take or to have a debt break would be permissible from a constitutional law point of view. Just as little as a debt break on the level of the Federal Republic of Germany interferes into the so-called sacrosanct core rights of the federal states, the communities don't have a right to debt either. In fact, communities are entitled, within their right to budget authority, only to autonomously administer their revenues and expenditures, and this is now the central point of view, within the framework of a legally regulated budget management. And however, if the states are limited to a right of free disposal of revenues and don't have the power to make new funding accessible autonomously, the situation should be the same for communities, for which financing by loans is one possible, though not stringent and the only stringent way of funding. There is no title deriving from the guarantee of local self-government providing for the creation of maintenance of certain ways of funding. And based on the finding that the municipal levels holds a title to adequate funding against the state, this finding can at least beyond the core not claim absolute validity, but it is subject to the reservation of the federal state's financial capacity. We call this in German the idea of symmetry of distributions. And this leads in principle to a relativization of the title of funding. A debt break, first and foremost, might have the effect that the financial resources to be distributed in the framework of the municipal fiscal equalization scheme will be cut off even more. And however, one has to consider that this effect is mandatorily required by the constitutional law of the Federal Republic, starting within the year 2020. But already now, in anticipation, a debt break is established by regulation, and this might affect as some kind of a credit crunch, because without new regulation, higher debt would be possible, as long it is not counteracting the long-term objective of a structurally balanced budget. And in summary, it might be stated that the title to adequate funding guaranteed by the state's constitutional law is not affected by regulations aiming to limit the deficits in this respect, as a municipal level is protected by constitutional law against cost-intensive transfers of functions, as every transfer of function has to be financially assured. Provided that the community's right to adequate funding isn't touched by a deficit limitation, in this regard, further regulations safeguarding the municipal finances are necessary. Even though it is not unthinkable that a lack of credit capital for a state reduces municipal revenues by reflex, it is at least not imperative. Revenues for communities originate predominantly from state tax revenues and not from credit capital. Moreover, while forming a debt brake, one has to consider that the state's constitutions don't allow for primacy of communities' interests, a finding that can also be taken from the settled case law of the state's constitutional courts. The body legislating for the budget has also to take into account of the co-equal state's interest, and therefore the municipal fiscal equalization scheme is subject to the state's financial capability. And the state can't provide funding for the municipal level if it doesn't have the financial means itself. And even if credit capital seems to increase financial capability, this impression is definitely wrong, as credit capital is, with regard to the debt repayment obligation, precisely not a durable resource. Seeing that, providing the municipal level with strict prepayment funding causes deep concern with regard to the limitation of debt, as prepayment would, in case of declining revenues for the state, result in a situation in which the federal state can't carry out its assigned responsibilities anymore. And finally, such a limitation of maneuvering room could be problematic from a principle of democracy point of view, namely when the discretion of the democratically elected parliament would be drained of content. Ladies and gentlemen, let me come to a conclusion. European stability law demands the inclusion of municipal deficits, but according to the German law, it is not on first sight exactly this. Therefore, communities should be bound and are bound within the framework of the federal states to make a contribution in the struggle for structural deficit reduction. But however, it is a primary challenge for the federal states to design appropriate regulation. And in the process, it has to be taken into account that exactly the municipal level constitutes the basis for a vital local community, resulting in the need for adequate funding. At the end, and this is not only from the lawyer's point of view, but it is aimed especially for politicians, one has to take into account who doesn't wish for debt shouldn't take on debt. Thank you very much for your audience.